Los Angeles in 1985 was a chaotic neon dream, thick with smoke, ambition, and the illusion that anyone could become a star if they wanted it badly enough. Maxine Minx, survivor of the massacre at the Texas farmhouse where Pearl once stalked her, had clawed her way from nothing to something that resembled fame. She lived in a small Hollywood apartment, surrounded by VHS tapes, magazine clippings, and screen tests she watched over and over. Every night she practiced her lines until her voice cracked. She believed she was destined for greatness. She believed she deserved it. And the world was finally, slowly, starting to believe it too. Her life, however, was built on a foundation of shadows. Maxine had left behind a trail of blood and bodies in Texas, though nobody ever traced it to her. She buried the trauma deep within, convincing herself that she had simply survived life's cruelty, nothing more. But scars had a habit of resurfacing at the worst times. Maxine was filming low-budget adult films in Los Angeles, sleazy, neon-soaked productions that barely paid the bills, when her world took another violent turn. The city was terrified of a new killer stalking the streets, one the media called the Night Stalker. His murders were brutal and ugly, leaving bodies across the valley from Hollywood Hills to Echo Park. But Maxine tried to ignore the news. She had landed her first mainstream acting role in a horror exploitation film called The Puritan, and she believed this was her moment. The director saw something in her, an intensity, a hunger, and Maxine was determined not to let anything ruin her big break. But the past always comes back. Detective Williams, a gruff, world-weary investigator, arrived on set one afternoon. He asked Maxine questions she didn't want to answer. He had photographs from the Texas massacre, pictures of the farmhouse, the mangled bodies, and items that suggested Maxine had been there. Maxine tried to play innocent, but the detective wasn't convinced. He warned her that danger was circling her again, that someone had taken a personal interest in her. He didn't say who. He didn't need to. As Maxine walked home after the interrogation, she felt eyes watching her. She brushed it off as paranoia until she found a VHS tape left at her door. No label, no return address. She played it reluctantly. The screen fuzzed with static before showing grainy footage of her walking on Melrose Avenue, filmed from a distance. Then it cut to her entering her apartment. Then the inside of her building hallway. Someone had followed her closely enough to record her every move. The tape ended with a black screen and a single whispered voice saying her name, Maxine. Fear wrapped around her like cold plastic. Someone wanted her, but she didn't know whether it was the police, a stalker, the Night Stalker, or someone connected to Texas. She called her agent, who brushed it off as typical fame nonsense, and reminded her to focus on her upcoming film auditions. Maxine understood she was alone in this. During shooting for The Puritan, Maxine threw herself into her role with ferocity. She channeled her trauma into each scream, each desperate moment, making her performance terrifyingly real. The crew whispered about her intensity, some in awe, some unnerved. Maxine believed that if she could be a star, she could finally bury everything that haunted her. But the murders in Los Angeles continued. Women were found dead with symbols carved into their skin. The media plastered headlines everywhere. And then it happened. One of Maxine's porn industry co-workers, Tiffany, was found murdered in a motel room. The body had markings that looked eerily similar to those the Texas killer used, except Pearl was dead. Maxine knew that better than anyone. The detective returned, telling Maxine that the killer seemed connected to her past. Photos and symbols from the old farmhouse had appeared in recent crime scenes. Someone was recreating Pearl's obsession with beauty, youth, and fame. Someone who knew the truth of what happened there. Maxine's terror turned into anger. She wasn't going to let anyone, or anything, steal her destiny. Not again. She hired a private investigator, a retired stuntman named Nate who knew Hollywood's dark corners better than any cop. Together they began hunting for whoever was stalking her. But the killer struck again, this time at the studio where Maxine was filming. A lighting tech was found dead in the soundstage, throat carved open, body positioned like a grotesque art piece. And on the wall, written in blood, were the words, "Stars are made from sacrifice." Maxine realized something terrifying. The killer wasn't just obsessed with her. They believed killing for her was a way to help her climb higher. Someone thought they were clearing her path to stardom. Soon after, Maxine found another VHS tape. This time, the footage showed someone walking through her apartment while she slept. The camera lingered above her long enough to catch her breathing. The final shot was of a hand gently brushing her hair while she lay unconscious. Maxine screamed and smashed the tape, but the image burned into her mind. Nate traced the origin of the tapes to an abandoned building in the valley, once a studio, now a decaying hideout for film fanatics, collectors, and people the industry chewed up and spit out. Maxine insisted they go alone. She wanted answers. She wanted to end this. Inside the building, they found walls covered in photos of Maxine, candid shots, headshots, film stills, even Texas newspaper clippings. It was a shrine to her life. And there were also clippings about the Night Stalker, suggesting the killer admired him. Maxine realized she was dealing with someone who saw murder as a form of devotion. Before they could escape, they were attacked. Nate was stabbed and left bleeding as Maxine ran through the building's maze-like corridors. The killer followed, whispering her name through the shadows. Maxine fought back, grabbing pieces of broken lighting equipment to defend herself. She managed to injure the attacker, but they fled before she could see their face. Nate survived but warned Maxine to leave town. Maxine refused. Running had never saved her before. Fame was her destiny, and she wasn't giving it up. The final confrontation came on the last night of filming. Maxine was shooting a brutal climax scene for the Puritan when the killer revealed himself, Steven, her film producer. He had been infatuated with Maxine since her first audition. He believed she was a goddess trapped among mortals, and he saw the killings as a way to shape her story into legend. He had been recreating Pearl's rituals in Los Angeles, thinking Maxine needed sacrifices to rise. He was the one leaving tapes, following her, killing anyone he thought unworthy to be around her. When Maxine realized he was the one who had filmed her sleeping, rage exploded within her. Steven tried to drag her into his twisted fantasy, telling her that the world only remembers blood and beauty. He wanted her to become an icon through tragedy, like Marilyn, like Sharon Tate. Maxine refused. She fought him fiercely across the studio set, smashing lights, crawling through fog machines, knocking over props. The fight looked like part of the movie, and the crew didn't realize it was real until Maxine stabbed Steven with a shard of a broken prop mirror. The cameras captured the entire fight, adding a horrifying realism to the footage. Steven lay dead, his blood mixing with fake movie blood on the set floor. Maxine stood over him, trembling but victorious. The crew stared in shock. Some screamed, some filmed. In Hollywood, reality and fiction blurred too easily. Detective Williams arrived moments later. He saw Maxine covered in blood and understood instantly what had happened. But he also saw the truth in her eyes. The violence wasn't new to her. He questioned her once more, and for a moment it seemed like her life would collapse again. But the detective knew the city needed a villain more than it needed another tragic starlet. Steven fit the narrative. Maxine was free. Maxine's performance in The Puritan, raw, furious, terrifying, was hailed as groundbreaking. The film became a cult hit. The tabloids devoured the story of the real murder on set, and Maxine's face appeared on every cover in Los Angeles. The trauma, the bloodshed, the nightmares, it all became fuel for her myth. Maxine didn't just survive Hollywood. She conquered it. She walked the red carpet with a confident smile, her past buried deep beneath layers of fame and glitter. She told herself she would never be a victim again. Death had followed her from Texas to Hollywood, but she had outlived it all. And now, she believed, the world was finally seeing her the way she always saw herself. A star, a legend, a woman who would do anything, no matter how dark, how violent, how unforgivable, to shine.